Carl Soqikwa for signing the MSA between Transnet and Neo Tell in his capacity as acting GCE, in terms of which the 225 million was paid, and the subsequent 200 million for the asset buyback was paid to Neo Tell by Transnet. So that is 425 million. At page 85, it's recommendations as against Mr. Singh. And once again, legal recommends that Transnet should consider taking action against Mr. Singh for other transgressions, but in particular on the topic we are on. Second bullet point is the approval of the payment of the 225 million that he approved before the signing of the MSA, which had been submitted to him as CFO by Mr. Carl Soqikwa. And lastly, Chair, at 86, it's further steps that are recommended be taken against Mr. Singh. And these include the fact that on payment of the 200 million, Transnet was working off a list that reflected wrong assets that were being purchased. The value of the assets being reacquired by Transnet was unknown, and yet 200 million was agreed upon. This 200 million was agreed upon on the 4th of December 2014 at a meeting without any valuation having been undertaken, and the invoice paid in December 2014. The correct list of assets actually that would have formed part of the buyback was only finalized on the 28th of September 2015, almost 9 months after the payment of the 200 million.
So payment was made by whoever made payment on behalf of Transnet without knowing the actual list
Indeed, Chair.
of items that they were buying or would get.
Yes, Chair, because the original list that was presented was reflected incorrect assets. The Chair would be correct that then they don't know the correct assets that were being acquired for were being bought back for 200 million. And in circumstances where, and the Chair should recall that these are assets that were taken over by Neo Tell in 2007. This is 7 years later, and there was no valuation process undertaken.
Neo Tell had bought them for how much?
We would have to go back. That detail doesn't appear.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but it appears in the report.
Because it would be important to compare the two prices.
Yes, to my recollection, Chair, and I speak under correction, it was like the price paid in 2014 did not appear to take into consideration any depreciation of the asset. It seems to be insensitive to elements such as depreciation, subject to confirmation, Chair. And that, Chair, that would then conclude the forensic reports under Section B. The last section is what we call judgments and cases, and that is continues on volume 17, Chair, and starts at page 88. My apologies, Chair. Page 88 is Project Daffodil. My apologies. That is the second preliminary report to the board of Neo Tell. This report was commissioned by Neo Tell itself, and the investigation was done by Wexmans, and it relates in the main to a payment by Neo Tell to Homix of 41 million and odd rand, and that is at page 89. And the inquiry was to determine the justification for Neo Tell appointing Homix and to negotiate, to finalize negotiation in the contract between Transnet and Neo Tell, for which Homix received 41 million. At page 90, we point out that this is a draft report. It doesn't make any recommendation or conclusions, and this must be investigated further and is being investigated further by the Commission. So this is definitely a draft report. It is a 2015 report. It is unlikely that any further work will be undertaken on this investigation to bring the report to a level of it being final.
So what is the value of including it?
The value of it is the investigators of the Commission can finalize the report and see whether or not they can draw any conclusions from the investigations conducted by Worksmans here.
Shouldn't it be outside of here and they can do that? And then when they're finalized, then you can see what comes in here.
Yes, we included it, Chair, because it highlighted a number of issues, and ours was to identify the gap. And the gap is the finalization. But if the Chair would rather...
Yeah, because the other reports you have put in here are reports where there were investigations and certain findings were made based on certain evidence.
Yes, Chair.
And this is a draft report. Should it not just be handed over to the Commission investigators to look at it and see how much use it will be to them? It may be that it will be of much use, but the product of what they will do after making use of it then might be what might end up here, isn't it?
Indeed, Chair.
Because it's got no findings. It's just a draft report. Somebody's draft.
The issue of Homix being appointed to negotiate to conclude the negotiations between Transnet and Neo Tell is also covered in other reports. Mm-hmm. So the information contained in the Worksman's report is relevant, and one would say has been confirmed by other reports, although that information, the conclusion then drawn on that appointment of Homix is not directly as a result of investigations there, but they emanate from the Worksman's report as it is.
Yeah, I still say, what's the value of us putting it in here? The others are findings. Those findings, if they are justified by the material that on which they are based, they may be useful, they may be helpful, and implicated persons may have to tell me what's wrong with those findings.
Yes,
but
Chair.
If it's a draft report.
We are happy to withdraw it, Chair. And we shall revert with the view of the investigators once their investigations are complete.
Maybe reflect on it and then let me know tomorrow.
We'll do so, Chair.
Yeah. Okay.
The last report then in the forensic section starts at page 91. It's a Transnet Commission report. It's an investigation conducted by Deloitte into the National Ports Authority Security Upgrade Project. At page 92, we set out the mandate of Deloitte and what it was to investigate. The first being the process leading to the award. Most importantly, it's at item 5, 6, and 7. It's review of payments made on this contract, verification of the work performed at 6, and 7, the necessity to perform a physical verification of the installation at all of the 6 ports to identify if it is necessary to make any changes thereto. From page 93, we list the key findings made by Deloitte. At 29, at page 93, it states Deloitte could not verify maintenance claimed paid for by the various ports to the supporting maintenance reports and documentation. Deloitte were only informed that these payments were made on instruction from head office. So the payments were made, but the basis thereof is not determinable. At 30, Deloitte in its report, pointed to the fact that the entity appointed, ESS, that's an Engineered Systems Solutions Pty Limited, did not deliver on some of the critical services provided for in the maintenance agreement. At 31, we highlight Deloitte's finding that various port personnel informed Deloitte during the course of its investigation that the excessive equipment purchased was used as spares. So instead of buying the quantity required of the equipment, more equipment was purchased. And that Deloitte suggests if that is the case, the validity of the extension of the warranties agreement claimed for by ESS and the amount paid for such warranties of 48 million plus is questionable in these circumstances because the spares used were already from equipment acquired. At 94, one of the key findings by Deloitte as that Transnet should consider taking corrective action regarding the 20 million payment.
Actually, it's a recommendation.
It's a recommendation.
As opposed to a finding.
It's a recommendation, that's correct, Chair. There are two payments for which it is suggested that Transnet must take corrective action. It's a payment of 20 million rand, which it deemed to be unauthorized expenditure, and an irregular expenditure of 127,000 plus. This report is final, Chair, and we recommend that it be accepted. Chair, that then brings me.
You must consider deleting that heading on page 94, which says outstanding issues, because it looks like you don't have outstanding issues here. Or
yes.
Do I misunderstand?
Well, it's not outstanding issues for the Commission. It really is recommendations to Transnet, because all their material is available in the report to take the corrective measures.
I think
yes.
all that you need is, because in the end, what recommendations Transnet accepts or doesn't accept might really be their issue. Probably you should just have a recommendation because that's all that is on that page.
Well, I will do so, Chair. Thank you, Chair. That then, Chair, brings us to the last part of the presentation, and these are the section C under the heading Court Matters. We start at page 96. This is an application brought by Mr. Lita Nyonya and Mr. Pillay, amongst others, being the two directors of regiments, against Mr. Eric Wood to declare him a delinquent director. The proceedings were instituted on the 8th of November 2016. It does not appear that the matter has been disposed of, so there is no judgment in the matter. The relevance of these papers is that Mr. Nyonya, Mr. Pillay, and Mr. Wood have made important allegations under oath in court.
Sorry, Ms. Selo.
Yes, sir.
I think it would make life easier if, in regard to judgments and court applications, what one sees immediately is names of the parties, as we are all used to. Silo versus Pretoria's case number, so and so, what court, then the rest can come, because then we rather than the way it shows here.
We have the front page of the papers is too small. We will put it on a bigger page.
Well, I'm looking at page 96.
96.
You have got a report name, and then you have got notice of motion, case number, declaring.
Yes.
So you're talking about the relief when I'm looking for the names of the parties. So in other words, I'm saying, tell me the names of the parties about this court application and the case number and in which court before you tell me anything else.
Indeed, Chair, at 96, it indicates the first two applicants. There's a range of applicants listed there.
Yeah, it's always that side. That's not how that's not how court judgments and court papers are like. The first thing you look at, you have the heading. Even if you don't have the heading here, in what court, in what matter, at least the names of the parties, you say, Silo versus Pretorius, case number so and so, South Gauteng Division of the High Court. Then that's complete. Then you tell us what was it about.
We will redo page 96, Chair.
That will make life easier. Okay.
I was trying to understand the instruction. We will redo page 96, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
It's supposed to reflect the two directors of regiments, supposed to reflect that Mr. Wood was the respondent, and that it's in the Johannesburg court and the case number.
Yes.
The attempt made here on this page can always be improved upon, and we shall, Chair.
Okay.
From 97, we tried to extract from those proceedings the important issues that are relevant to the work of this commission, as made in the various affidavits of the applicants and the respondents, Mr. Nyonya, Mr. Pile, and Mr. Wood, all of whom are relevant to the allegations made against regiments in respect of Transnet. In particular, at page 98, Chair, if the Chair were to look at bullet point 5 under 1, we have previously referred to this invoice, the 93 million rand invoice by Trillian, which was paid for the club loan. And in the morning when we were discussing this club loan, we indicated that some investigations have found that that invoice ought not to have been paid at all because Trillian had done absolutely no work for Transnet in that regard. So that transaction is dealt with in detail by all the parties in those affidavits. And that is really the relevance of these proceedings. It deals with other aspects of the transaction, the SWAT 2, the SWAT 1. All these are matters that will be ventilated in full course by the witnesses. And we make the point at page 102, Chair, under the heading Other Commentary, and we state that the matters raised in the affidavits are relevant to the multiple work streams of this commission. And we would like the Chair to take notice thereof. As soon as if a judgment is handed down in the matter, we shall update the record. The following document starts at page 103, Chair. And I believe that it shows better on the screen, it's bigger. We can produce a bigger version in the papers.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
but also what's under the report name is better than what we had before in the
Indeed.
other one.
Yes, Chair. This is actually a judgment. It's a matter brought by the Transnet Second Defined Benefit Fund against Regiment's fund managers. At 104, we highlight that Transnet Fund had concluded an agreement with Regiment's fund in terms of which Regiments was to administer the funds on behalf of Transnet. In disputes between them, certain issues arose that gave Transnet a concern that the assets currently controlled by regiments would be dissipated, or there was a likelihood they would be, and that Transnet would not be able to recover anything should it be successful in its own main action. So the Transnet Fund brought an interdict, and the judgment, and was successful in that regard. So the judgment is restricted only to the anti-dissipation interdict. The main action is yet to be determined. And the third one is at page 105, and this is a judgment again in a matter between Transnet and T-Systems. The chair will recall that Mr. Pretorius this morning made reference to T-Systems, and in one of the reports I have referred to, the T-Systems contract is also dealt with. Now, Transnet brought this matter before court. It's just for record purposes to show that the matter was upheld and the award of the contract to T-Systems by Transnet was set aside, and the party that was by law entitled to the award of that contract, Gijima, has since been appointed in its stead. There is no further action to be taken in regard to this judgment. It's just for noting purposes, because T-Systems features significantly in the evidence of witnesses to come, Chair. And that, Chair, brings me to the conclusion of the gap analysis, unless there are questions from the Chair.
So what comes, the last bit on that bundle is not for today?
No, what we have gone through today, Chair, is an attempt to summarize the bulk.
Summary of this,
yes,
okay.
Chair. And the Chair will recall that I gave him a bundle of the
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. I forgot. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Silo. We will then adjourn for the day, and we'll start at normal time tomorrow, namely 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.